The glow of Christmas has mostly faded, but there are still some signs in some of our places, especially here in this church. So I got to thinking, what happens if you didn't feel the Christmas spirit this year? What if Christmas pageants and store decorations and television specials, carols on the radio, and gifts under the tree, what if they didn't cheer you up, but were, in fact, real downers? There are people right here in our community who feel like maybe they're out of step with the cheery candles and carols and the nativity scene. It's not that they're Grinches, but rather that they find themselves in pain. And it seems to feel worse around this time of the year because it's multiplied by the season's sights and smells and sounds. They feel alienated. They feel different. And they are not able to unburden themselves because they don't want to be a spoiler during this time of good cheer. There are more of these people in our community than we realize. And what causes them to feel outside the circle? They may have harsh memories of childhood Christmases due to domestic violence or drug or alcohol addiction at home. When they were young, their parents may have been chronically ill, leaving them with adult responsibilities before they were old enough to deal with them. They missed the childhood that they never had. Others had parents die, or their homes split by a contentious divorce. Poverty, then and now, deprives parents of the ability to buy presents for their children. There are also childless couples or parents that have had a child die, and for them, this children's feast is particularly hard. And sickness. Sickness knows no proper season, no appropriate time. Some of our worshipers are struggling with cancer for themselves or somebody they love. There are whole groups of people who feel alienated during this holiday season. It is the Feast of the Epiphany that celebrates God's showing forth. It celebrates Jesus' appearance in this world. We are celebrating that God shows up in places right where he's needed, just when the darkness seems to have an unbreakable grip upon our hearts and spirits. The prophet Isaiah, that Barbara proclaimed this morning for us, addresses that darkness. Isaiah starts with this rousing command, "Rise up in splendor," he says. Now, why would we do that, for heaven's sake? Because God's light is coming, just like the rising sun. The darkness that Isaiah says covers the earth, that has a poetic link to the darkness at the beginning of our history, in Genesis, when God created the light out of total darkness. We are reminded of that power of God, and it can overcome any darkness, even the darkness that came before creation. Isaiah is suggesting that what God could do once, God will do again. The line in that passage that conveys this hope begins with the word "but." But upon you the light shines. The word "but," that's a word of interruption. It is a word of contradiction to what has been. And after we list the darkness and name the pain, we put our faith in a God who says "but" and then brings about the light. In some situations, only the Creator can effect that change or give us the hope to get through this. Isaiah prepares us for today's gospel story. He says that believers will experience God's shining through, but also, because of the light that's in them, others will walk by the light. He's speaking about the Gentiles here. God is reaching out to non-believers through a light that shines from his believers. The gospel shows God's star lighting the way to this Jewish couple and their child, and the very famous outsiders, the Magi. People who feel like outsiders this season may hear a note of hope in Isaiah. There will be a light for all the nations, he says. You have to remember that the Gentiles, foreigners, and widows, and even children, they were the marginal people in the Jewish community of that time. They had no, or at most, minimal rights. And on this Epiphany, maybe we might identify with these marginalized and hear a note of promise addressed to them and us. Hear that promise. You shall be radiant at what you see, and your heart shall throb and overflow. When we can see no way out, or we see no relief on the horizon, we need to lean on that promise. It's not an empty promise. It's not a pat on the back or an encouragement to look on the bright side of life. This is a promise from God who created light where there wasn't any. People who were other now can see in a way that they couldn't before on their own. And so they come to believe what could easily be missed in the darkness and struggle. That God is doing something that will bring praise and thanksgiving. And so enter the Magi, the supreme outsiders. These are a people who made a journey, leaving behind what they thought was familiar in search of the truth. And they didn't have the rich Jewish prophetic tradition to guide them. It's strange, isn't it, that the religious leaders tell Herod that Bethlehem is the place from which the new shepherd of Israel, the Christ, the Messiah, Bethlehem is the place where that person is going to come from. Those who were supposed to be religiously attuned don't go in search of the one that the prophets anticipated. Instead, it's the Gentile Magi, the foreigners, the marginalized, those who are open to change. Those are the ones who continue the quest. We're soon going to be tossing out Christmas trees all over the place if we haven't already done that. We're going to be cleaning up the house, getting things back to normal. We will want to be careful that we don't forget that at the heart of the Christmas season is God's gift to us. We live and believe in the security that God's gift will always be there for us. Our brilliant light, our guiding star on our journey home. Today is a day of great gospel light. We get to put aside the past. We let ourselves be guided by this gospel story and make our journey to a place where truth is found. This is a day for people willing to let go of whatever holds their spirits back, to start all over, to begin to make a journey in the direction of the one who gives us a new vision. This is the feast where everybody is welcomed to God's saving embrace, and outsiders have nothing to fear.